Welcome to the Minimalist Educator Podcast, where the focus is on a less is more approach to education. Join your hosts, Christine Arnold and Tammy Musiowski, authors of The Minimalist Teacher and Your School Leadership Edit, a minimalist approach to rethinking your school ecosystem, each week as they explore practical ways to simplify your work, sharpen your focus, and amplify what matters most so you can teach and lead with greater clarity, purpose, and joy.
Schools are bursting with great ideas, but sometimes all of those great ideas can end up feeling a little bit chaotic. In today's episode, we're talking about when it's time to declutter. Not your classroom shelves, but the programs, projects, and initiatives competing for your school's time and energy. We'll explore how to spot what's no longer serving your community and share some practical ways to streamline so your focus stays sharp and your impact stays strong. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Minimalist Educator Podcast. Tammy and I are chatting together today. How are you, Tammy?
I am doing well, Christine. How are you?
I am fantastic. I always love our chats together. Today we are talking about something near and dear to our hearts and that we wrote about in our first book, The Minimalist Teacher. Yes, I did have to look at the cover of the book to check the title there. Whoops. But yes, we're talking about decluttering initiatives. So in our busy school contexts where it sometimes feel like we have initiatives coming at us thick and fast all the time, it can feel like it is impossible to declutter this area of our work. But hopefully we can think a little bit more about that today and offer a path forward where we can declutter a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds great. I do think that we've all experienced this, right? So whatever role we're in, most of us have started as teachers. I started as a TA. And in any role that you're in a school, you're going to feel this. So it could be office staff, could be TA, classroom teacher, specialist. But I think our school leaders feel this potentially the most because the filtering often comes through them if we're talking about those bigger picture initiatives, right? Because we have large scale mandated district initiatives or, however, regional initiatives versus our self-selected ones. So we'll kind of separate those out. But the school leader really does have a big job in this kind of initiative clutter situation, I guess we can call it, because they do have to look at what the goals of the school are and is the initiative going to meet the priorities for the school? And if it's something that has been mandated, how do you make that fit into your school culture and what you do already at your school so it doesn't feel like this ball of clutter that doesn't make sense in our context? So I know we often talk about, there's tons of initiatives that come through. And so often we think of that kind of phrase initiative fatigue, which we have all felt because, we've experienced all these changes all the time, like especially education has, kind of like almost like a 2-year cycle with some things, right? Whether it's updating curriculum materials or new pilot programs for technology or, whatever. But there can be some element of excitement in that. And I think it's important for us to recognize that it's okay to get excited about a new initiative we want to try or we've learned about. And so can we maybe use that excitement as a way to help us streamline or declutter what's coming at us? I don't know. What do you think about that? Have you felt that?
Yeah, I think you brought up a lot of really interesting points there. The idea of new initiatives coming like every 2 years is actually crazy. Very true. I've seen that over and over again, 100%. But it's crazy when you think about it. And anytime you read anything about successful change management, I don't think any expert would be recommending that we, take on a new math program every 2 years or take on a new literacy approach every 2 years, because if you really think about it carefully, you need, at least the first year to wrap your head around what it's trying to do, what are the nuances, how does this fit with me and my program and my community. And then you need time after that to actually get comfortable with it, get proficient with it, maybe modify it for your context and so on. So the idea of doing that every 2 years it is baffling, but I know it does happen for sure. Also thinking about, that excitement versus fatigue. I know within my own career, I think I was always one of those early adopter people, like getting really excited and like, let's go, let's do this new approach, this new plan. And I think some of that fatigue has actually set in over the years of teaching, because it just keeps happening to you over and over again, right? Like, oh, another new thing, oh, another new thing, oh, another new thing. And wait, this feels very similar to one we've done before, but now it has a new name. And so I think over the course of a career, you can move from that fatigue to excitement, or excitement to fatigue as well, just through the ongoing interaction with these different initiatives that come at you.
Yeah, I think so. And we know that it takes, there's lots of research behind, you need 3 to 5 years if you're trying to implement change. And so if you're trying to bring in a worthwhile initiative, you need the time, like you said, that first couple of years, it's getting to know, and then how does it fit in your context? And then you need to collect some data to see if it actually works.
Exactly.
So, I remember we had a 2-year pilot when I was at my school in New York, and it was on a couple of technology programs. It was fairly new idea when the schools were getting one-to-one devices. And I guess in that time, for what it was, you could collect enough data in that couple of years. But at the same time, you don't get to see the growth of students for that long, right? Because it's only, for us, it was like grades 3 and 4. And then what? What do we do? So now that data is not usable anymore. We don't use that anymore. Like we want to see continued change or growth, or, or does this work or not? You need longer than that to figure that out.
Yeah. How do you know that your context needs a new initiative or a new program after that short amount of time? Like, you haven't really had enough time to see from the data whether it is effective or not. It's a very good point.
Yeah. So I think that's where a lot of that fatigue comes in, right? So we can start out super excited about something, and then it becomes part of your routine, and you're like, okay, well, we're done. We're not doing that anymore. And then you're like deflated because you invested your time in it, and then you're just done with it. So you're almost like, why did we do that? What was the point? Which, I mean, is a lot of what we talk about. Like, what's the purpose behind something? And, especially if it seems to be going well, it's become part of the routine, you're getting some interesting data, then why would you discontinue something that's providing some value? And then, versus like, oh, here's another one we're going to try. This might be better. Can we hold off?
Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah, it's the shiny object situation, right?
I think there is a little bit of that coming in for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
I'm wondering,
we shouldn't let that fatigue, if there is something really fantastic coming out that is an area that you're enthusiastic and passionate about, that has some good research backing behind it, we shouldn't let that fatigue take away that excitement. We should still be able let ourselves have that enjoyment of what we're passionate about, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. And I think like some of the things that I've seen recently that are, I don't want to say coming out, but because I think they've already kind of been in the scene, but I think it's sometimes the way we think about something. So maybe it's not necessarily this new initiative, but it's a way of thinking about something or a framework we can use. So you hear those words a lot, right? To help us kind of rethink what an initiative might be, particularly particularly when we're looking at things like SEL, maybe, because we know that's just something that's SEL is life. So we just should be doing that all the time. And I know some schools need to have some kind of program to help them move along with that, which is fine. But I think when we have some initiatives that feel like natural fits, it doesn't feel like it's an exhausting thing. And I think that's when the self-selected versus mandated is really valuable, because you really do then get to have a say. Oftentimes teachers will, they'll get a form or something to give some feedback on new programs or new ideas for what they want to bring into the school. And so that can just have such a greater value when you get to choose.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it is unavoidable that we will come across some mandated initiatives. I think, no matter where you work in the world or what kind of education system you're in, at some point you will come across something that's mandated that you don't have a lot of choice in, for sure. Mm-hmm. But there's a lot still that you can do within that mandated initiative, for sure.
Yeah.
But if you are in a place where you have the ability to self-select some, that is freeing. It creates, a feeling of autonomy and self-efficacy and things like that. But it can also be a little bit scary too, because there is a lot out there. And how do you know you're choosing the best version of what is out there? Yeah. So I think both, whether it's mandated or self-selected, I think there are pros and cons for both different types of initiatives, for sure.
Yeah, because we know that decision fatigue is a real thing too, right? So sometimes it's like, just tell us what to do. Just give us the thing. Versus like, oh man, we have to go through this. We got to do our research now because this is the thing that we're trying to find to match our school, which, either way, it's still a lot of work. So can we think of some good tips, or what tips do we have that might be from our book? Maybe not, because we do have a decision-making tree there about adoption. And we have our funnels, which, our triple P funnels, which are, looking at the purpose of something. What are the priorities within it? How do we pare it down? So if you are faced with, let's say, at this time of the year, you've got a new state initiative maybe, and you have something that you're looking for in terms of, I can't even think of a self-selected school-wide initiative. I can think of a lot of classroom ones, because those are different too, right? So you really have to look at kind of the scope of your initiatives as well. But I guess whether it's in your classroom, so if you're choosing some kind of system for your classroom, or a system for your school, there's definitely some things to think about. We have mentioned, what best fits your context. So you have to look at your school demographics and the culture you have created with your community to ensure that whatever you choose. So, you and I don't often promote like behavior programs, but that's what's coming to mind, right? Because schools do use like PBIS, or I guess like something like character building, like Character Strong, or, there's those kinds of programs as well, which isn't a behavior program, but, it's something that people use and has some value to it. Does that fit your school context? Is that what you're looking for, right? Is that what your school needs? Versus like, do you need something more academic? Or do you need something for extracurriculars? Or, there's just so many buckets that you can be looking at for your school. So you really have to look at the context. Other thoughts there?
I think another big one to consider is your school strategic plan as well. Because if you have
Yes.
got, a mission of your school, a 5-year plan for your school, and then this initiative doesn't align with any of that, you're going to have a really hard time, finding time for it in all of the things that are in your plan and your mission, but also just getting the motivation and buy-in for yourself and for others if it just seems like this added on thing. So I think we always need to be going back to that big purpose question and looking at things like our school mission and vision and values and what your plan is in whatever time frame that your school has outlined that in.
Yeah, that's so important. Also, if you're facing a mandated initiative, what are the parts of within that already align to what you're doing at your school? So anytime that you can streamline something, right? So like kind of really pick apart what your initiatives are and what aligns well. And, if you don't have to introduce something new, then don't. Just build it into what you already do. And I'm just trying to think of an example. One big initiative that is coming up in different states is cell phone use for students in classrooms. And so I think there's a couple of schools of thought on this, right? I've seen some like Instagram reels of people talking about it. And one thought is, the kids just don't bring their phones to school. And if they're brought to school, they are held for parents to come and pick them up. Now, if this policy isn't one that aligns with what you've been doing at your school, right? So let's say your school already has a cell phone policy and it's working well. Like, let's say kids are allowed to keep it in their backpack, so they just have to put it in a bucket, but it's been working. How do you align with a larger scale mandate like that, where now it's like the complete opposite end, right? Like you can't bring your phone to school kind of situation. That might be a tricky one, right?
I think it relates back to what you were saying earlier about leadership's role with all of this, because I think in a way they're gatekeeping how we respond and react to the initiatives, and they really set the tone as well. So if the leadership is taking the approach of like, you're doing this, you're doing it today, you have no choice, you're doing it from front cover to back cover, that's it, no questions asked, versus let's look at this together, let's tackle it together, let's pull out what we like, what's going to work for our context, what matches our school plan, the needs of our community, and, see what we can, leave behind a little bit maybe, and other ones that need to be at the forefront and the priority within this initiative. I think those two sorts of pathways in how you bring in this mandated initiative are going to have very, very different reactions from your community as a whole.
Yeah, I agree with you. The approach always matters, right? Doesn't even matter what it is. And so if your context already has something figured out that works, then that second approach where, we're going to look at this together to see how it aligns with what we do already feels safer, more, it feels like there's a little bit more respect there, right? For you to be able to make the decisions at your school.
Yes, we're
versus
trusting
like
you as an expert to make some good judgments here. Yeah,
right.
absolutely.
Yeah. And I think that one of the biggest struggles with cell phones, it's so different in every school, the thought behind that. But I had a conversation this summer with someone about not banning cell phones in classrooms because it does take away someone's autonomy, right? Like it
Right.
takes away someone's agency to, like if you are in English class and you need to find a quote for something, you can just like find one on your phone real quick. But again, it's like setting the parameters, right? Let's it's sometimes about like co-creating what the expectation is. And maybe that's the important part with the initiatives too. Like how do you co-create what this looks like in your school or in your classroom so that we're meeting the expectations of the mandate or the initiative, whatever, however you want to look at it. I think we're getting into some really muddy waters around trying to declutter initiatives.
I know we're not possibly not making it clearer for anyone.
But I mean, it's a good conversation to have because this is how complicated it is often at schools. And so
for
I
individuals
think,
as well as collective groups, for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. And so, I mean, what we're saying really is how do you fit something that's introduced to you into what you're already doing, right? How can you streamline? How can you take the pieces that best fit your context and do that collaboratively so that voices are heard?
For sure, absolutely. And I think that piece that we were talking about of thinking about the purpose behind it, and then how are we rolling this out? How are we introducing it? And how are we making it come alive in our context? I think that is a really good anchor point for you to keep coming back to
Yeah.
as these things are coming your way.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of the pare down pointer, right? Like you just kind of pinpointing, I guess, within those initiatives, like really find the links to your context.
That's it. What is going to benefit your community the most from this? What are the real strengths within this new initiative that you can highlight?
Yeah.
For your community, for sure. I think it's important too, when we're talking about this topic, is to think about that idea of building our individual capacity. Because I think you could easily fall into this path of, I have no capacity here, I have no voice here. This is just being done to me and I have no say in this whole situation. And we do talk about it within the book, within the chapter, but I think it's worth mentioning here as well about how we can build our capacity within our educational context so that you don't feel like you are just at the mercy of the shifting sands beneath our feet.
Yeah, exactly.
So what are some of the ways that individual teachers can build their own capacity?
Probably one of the most important things would be to pay attention to what's coming your way, right? So, and just get as much knowledge as you can about the initiative and the way that it will potentially impact your school and then also your classroom as an individual unit within the school. Because I do think that, the more you know, the better off you're going to be. And then that also helps you support your colleagues as well. So just kind of, doing, thinking collaboratively, get with people to talk about it, figure out what's going to work best for your context. And just getting to know it as well as you can, ask questions too. And because you know that you're going to have a part to play in that initiative. So you got to figure out what that is as soon as possible. I think that's a big piece.
Yeah, I think the discussion point is so important to keep encouraging yourself to have conversations with people, whether it's your fellow teachers, whether it's the parent community, whether it's the people above you in the hierarchy of your context, is to not shy away from, as you say, asking the questions and having the conversations about it. So that, yeah, you're keeping yourself informed about what's going on, but maybe also having a discourse about, well, what is the purpose behind this? What are the threads here that are the most important parts that I need to make sure that I'm doing justice with? And have you thought about X, Y, and Z and these other possibilities as well? I think, having those conversations, those professional conversations, are key to keep building your capacity as someone who has a voice in these situations.
Yeah, I agree. I think those are probably the two biggest pieces for that. Yeah. There's just so many things that we can talk about with this, because you just mentioned that discourse and it made me think of something else we talked about. But I'm going to stop there because we can keep going.
we could keep going on and on. But as you say, it can get very muddy, and it can get very emotional for people as well, because they're experiencing this. So hopefully we haven't made the waters more muddy, and we have actually shined the light on a few things that might be helpful for you when you're considering all the different initiatives that are coming your way.
Yes, thank you for listening. And if you have questions, you can always send us a comment about things like this as well, because, we're open to more discussion about all of the ideas that we have on our shows. So thank you for listening.
This episode is sponsored by Plan Z Education Services, supporting educators with forward-thinking professional learning that puts both student impact and teacher wellness at the centre. Driven by a vision to teach less, impact more, they help educators find purpose, prioritise what matters, and simplify their practice. Learn more at planzeducation.com.
Thank you for listening to the Minimalist Educator Podcast. Join Christine and Tammy and guests again next time for more conversations about how to simplify and clarify the responsibilities and tasks in your role. If today's episode helped you rethink, reimagine, reduce, or realign something in your practice, share it in a comment or with a colleague. For resources and updates, visit planzeducation.com and subscribe to receive weekly emails. Until next time, keep it simple and stay intentional.